Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the Working Families Party Assembly, our monthly virtual membership meeting. We have people calling in from all over the country tonight, so we're giving people just a minute or two before we get started. For those of you who are able to join by video this evening, it is nice to see your faces populating. For those who are dialing in by phone, we will invite your voices into the space when we do our breakout groups later. In just a few moments, I'm going to introduce our WFP National Director, Maurice Mitchell. Before I do that, if you're on video, you'll see a chat box on the right side of the Zoom application, or maybe on the bottom of the screen for some of you. You can go ahead and use that, say hello to folks, tell us where you're calling in from. Because of the nature of this call, maybe shout out your Black hero or folks who you want to invoke in this space tonight, just to get us grounded. And while people are joining, I'll just take a minute to introduce myself. So my name is Britney Whaley. I am a senior political strategist here at Working Families. I'm based in Metro Atlanta. In my role at WFP, I created a program called Bet on Us. Bet on Us invests in the leadership of Black women and non-binary Black folks and supports us in creating communities of self-determined, progressive Black folks who work together to disrupt systems that don't serve us. It's ultimately about going from a current political reality that counts on us to do the heavy lifting without investment, to betting on us to be the strategists, the operatives, the candidates who are leading and being the decision makers. I could go on and on about Bet on Us, but I won't. If you want to know more about the program, please text Bet on Us, one word, to 738-674. I'm thrilled to be here tonight for obvious reasons. Again, if you're just joining us, go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat. I'll be introducing our National Director, Maurice Mitchell, to get us started in just a moment. And I see some action in the chat box. Hi, Leslie from Charlotte, shouting out Jay Bird, Sue in Missouri. I see Marta from Colorado. We're everywhere. I see Albuquerque, New Mexico, Kendra Brooks getting shout out. This is some great energy. Let's keep that going. Again, for those who are just joining us, I'm Britney Whaley. The WFP Assembly is our monthly virtual membership meeting held the last Sunday of each month. At the end of the program, we'll have breakout groups of 10 to 20 people for you to meet other WFP members. This is a guided conversation led by WFP staff. During tonight's breakouts, we'll be asking your feedback on the WFP Assembly itself. What do you like? What do you wish was done differently? Things like that. The WFP Assembly is meant to be a space for all of us, so we need your feedback and we need to make sure that we're doing this right. The call is expected to run about 45 minutes in total. Before we get started, let's lay out a few ground rules. So the WFP Assembly is an organizing call, and there's room for people here with a lot of different views. So let's please treat each other with kindness, with respect, and with the dignity that we all deserve. Without further ado, let me introduce you and hand it over to Maurice Mitchell, the WFP National Director.
Good evening. And
Maurice, you want to take it away?
Thanks so much, Brittany. Can folks hear me? Great. So thank you so much, Brittany, for that introduction. And I'm so proud of all the work that you've done to build the Bet on Us program, to create a pipeline for Black women who are interested in accessing our democracy. So I encourage people to engage with Brittany on the work that she's doing if you're interested. So let me just get right into the conversation, and let me just share a few things to contextualize it. So my family comes from the Caribbean islands of Trinidad and Grenada. They're small countries, and most people on them can trace their ancestry to enslaved Africans who were forcibly transported to the islands to work on sugar plantations. In the 1920s and 30s, Black radicals from Trinidad like CLR James and Dr. Eric Williams, who were fighting for their own independence, saw their struggle as linked with anti-colonial struggles beginning to emerge in Africa. Many Caribbean radicals saw the liberation of Black people in America from Jim Crow as part of the same worldwide freedom struggle, because industrial capitalism in Europe and America was built on the backs of enslaved African people. Black radical thought was cross-pollinating between Africa, the Caribbean, and the US. Malcolm X, whose mother was from Grenada, traveled to Africa 4 times. Claudia Jones, a Trinidadian immigrant who grew up in the 1920s in Harlem, described the super exploitation of Black women and how it undermined the liberation of all Black people. Black people from the Caribbean often brought their radical politics to the United States when they immigrated and brought their militant energy into the struggles as well. Like the local 1199's drive to organize hospitals in New York, for example. My mother, who immigrated to Long Island in the 1970s, is a proud member of 1199 to this day. She became a citizen, votes in every election, and is active in her community today. She's in her 70s, works 16-hour days working the polls every election. And when I think of the power of Black women, she was the first example in my life. Until the 1960s, most of Africa and most African descendant people in the world lived under the rule of European colonial empires. The year I was born, 1979, a young lawyer named Maurice Mitchell and the New Jewel movement led a bloodless revolution in Grenada against a violent and corrupt government. They ruled until the US government under Reagan invaded in 1983. I remember watching TV as a child when that happened. This lineage of radical thought, Black liberation, and socialism are what I inherited from my parents. The years I spent building the movement for Black lives with other comrades were about building Black political power in the United States. I worked with some of the most incredible Black women organizers like Jessica Bird, Rukia Lumumba, and Kayla Reed, who launched the Electoral Justice Project. Their work builds on the radical work of women like Claudia Jones and Kimberly Crenshaw. So after that history, how did it come to be that I'm leading the Working Families Party, an explicitly multiracial movement? What I want to tell you today is that there is no contradiction at all between these two projects. A multiracial working class political project cannot succeed without Black, Latinx, Asian, and Native political power. It's important to understand why. Whenever we talk about cross-racial, class-based organizing, there isn't a question of whether white folks are going to be allowed in. The question that's often asked, explicitly or implicitly, is what Black and brown folks have to leave behind in order to make sure that white folks don't leave the coalition. And the thing we're not supposed to talk about is, of course, race and the ongoing history of racial oppression in this country. Black and brown folks are told, for the sake of the struggles we share in common around class, to abandon the struggles that are unique to us, for the sake of being in coalition with people who are neutral, who are uncomfortable, or who have some sort of benefit from white supremacy. But no multiracial movement built on papering over the differences in our lives and histories, and in the challenges and oppressions we face, will have any staying power once the ruling class fights back. Time and again in American history, multiracial coalitions have been split by ruling class appeals to the solidarity of whiteness. That's why we'll never overcome class injustice in this country unless we overcome racial injustice. This is what I believe. Multiracial coalition does not mean ignoring our differences. It means seeing them and choosing to stand together anyway and struggle together. The success of all of our movements depends on Black folks being organized, having been denied basic rights for so long. Black folks, and Black women in particular, are among those who hold their rights most dear and exercise them most ferociously, especially the right to vote. And just as the dominant histories are mainly written by white people, they're also mainly written by men. We all know that Marcus Garvey, and we all know the name Marcus Garvey, but how many of us know the histories and contributions of his first wife, Amy Garvey, or his second wife, Amy Jack Garvey? Both important leaders and thinkers in their own right. And how often do we learn about women because of their more famous husbands? The stories of Black women's power are too often untold. This week, Senator Elizabeth Warren gave a powerful speech in Atlanta. She told the story of the Atlanta washwomen's strike in 1881. Just 16 years after the end of slavery, a group of 20 Black laundry workers formed a union. In 3 weeks, there were 3,000 members. The small minority of white laundry worker women were joining too. That is some incredible organizing. And they didn't even have Black Twitter. And they were able to build that movement under the conditions that they're experiencing just a few years after emancipation. And the strike inspired other hotel workers, maids, cooks, and nurses to agitate too. It almost shut down the city. It's no exaggeration to say that the path to a better country and a better world comes through liberation and empowerment of Black folks, especially Black women. So tonight, we're going to hear a few incredible stories of Black women organizing. First, I want to introduce a woman who you've probably already heard about if you're with WFP, Kendra Brooks, who just won a history-making election as a Working Families Party candidate for Philadelphia City Council at large. And now it's my, so Kendra, if you're on, do we have Kendra? So we're just checking to make sure that we have Kendra on. Okay. Yep, Kendra, are you on? I think you might be. Okay. If we don't have Kendra, we'll work on whatever the technical difficulty is to bring Kendra around, and we'll move to our second conversation. So we have a slate of amazing women up. We'll get Kendra back in the queue. But I'd like to move on to talk to another woman who's organized deeply with us for many years of Working Families. So we're talking about Black women's political power this whole conversation. And there aren't a lot of people more powerful than the women I'm about to introduce. Stacy Davis Gates is a vice president of the Chicago Teachers Union. Earlier this month, they came off an incredible 11-day strike. I don't know how many people saw that in the news. It was historic and inspiring. And when they go on strike, they are fighting not just for fair pay for themselves, but also for smaller class sizes and more educational funding for their students. And they're fighting for whole communities. Stacy is also the chair of United Working Families, the Chicago local partner of WFP, and also serves on the WFP National Committee. I'm so proud to have you here. Welcome, Stacy. Let's get right to it. So first of all, tell us a little bit about the strike in Chicago.
Hey, first off, thank you for having me. Happy Sunday to everyone. A little bit about the strike. Look, cumulative work, to be perfectly honest with you. When the caucus that I'm a part of gained control under Karen Lewis's leadership, another powerful Black woman, back in 2010, we basically said that our brand of unionism was going to be completely different from what had been happening with the CTU in prior years, that we were going to give voice to the issues in our city that obviously became a part of our school communities. We were going to be explicit in our resistance to racist policies that marginalize the education of Black children, of brown children in our city. So this resulted in a strike in 2012, another one in 2016. But it also resulted in 50 school closings that were primarily targeted towards Black students and brown students in our city. So this struggle has been mercurial, is a word that comes to mind, but it has also been something that has changed Chicago. For the first time ever, we have a Black queer woman who is the mayor of our city. And while we, obviously have some issues with her leadership, the fact that a Black queer woman is on the 5th floor of City Hall means that the type of resistance that we've helped to lead is working in our city.
Thanks. Another question around the worker power that you're building, not just the strike, but in general, how has this worker power helped to build political power at United Working Families?
Well, I would say that as a union, we see the 360 of our existence in the city. And so, yes, we are, leading a grassroots type of labor struggle, but you can't do that in isolation. You can't do that on an island. You have to be very clear about coalition work. And that's the only way you get tens of thousands of people in the street. But you also have to be clear about the legal constraints on our ability to be free in Chicago. Our oppression is in state code, it's in city ordinance, it's in county ordinance. And so what we also sought to do is to put our own in office. And that started quickly with this leadership. Right now, we have members serving at every level of government, county, city, and state. We also have allies who are elected into office as well. We see that as an extension of our work. We see them as organizers in the, quote, halls of power in which they inhabit. You can't fully realize the type of freedom, justice, and equity that we fight for without also having those organizers in the spaces in which we are typically defamed as people, as a movement.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. And also the concept of, and I think this is like a challenging concept for many of us, this idea that elected officials that are coming from our movements and our organizations could play this role of organizers and be comrades with us inside the halls of power. I want to shift to another question, speaking about organizers. What has been the role specifically of Black women's leadership in the fights that you just talked about in Chicago?
You know, I mentioned Karen Lewis earlier. Karen became the president of the Chicago Teachers Union back in 2012. And at that point, this platform that we have in Chicago currently did not exist. And what she was able to do was help lead, give voice, give courage, give platform, give a real life figure to the resistance that we were leading there. And it took a Black woman. Chicago is hyper racialized. It's one of the most segregated spaces in our world. That being said, her ability to speak across race lines, to speak across class lines, to be perfectly honest with you, was critical to the story of what's possible in Chicago if we work together in coalition and build resistance. She was able to give voice to that. That being said, like as a Black woman, it also made her a target. You know, for as revered and as special as she is, it was also a very stressful space. It was also a very mean space for her to be in, because she was not of the who sent you crew in Chicago. She was in the I'm here because this makes sense. I'm leading because people need it. So being female and being Black female left her out as a target, you know, and it's not just necessarily our class enemies that made her a target. It's also those who, you know, we sit at the table with, because taking leadership from Black women is not something that a lot of us have learned to do, are comfortable with doing. And so, you know, I credit her leadership, her strength, her courage, her voice as to get to where we are now in Chicago.
Thank you. And thanks for lifting her up. So many people that I know, so many comrades I know in Chicago lift up the work that she's done. And
absolutely.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing that. One last thing before we let you go, we usually end these interviews by asking our guests to join the WFP. Now, you've been a part of the organization for many years. You served on the WFP National Committee. So let me ask you just a little bit differently. Why should people join?
Listen, we have a maniac in the White House who is intent on promoting and leading the very worst of what America is. WFP is a space, is a home for those who want to imagine a place where everyone who's on this call can be free, can be in positions of authority, can be in positions of power, but also that our movement, which is about the many and not the few, is realized locally, statewide, and nationally. WFP is a home for justice and equity.
Great. Thank you so much. And thanks for all of the work that you do in Chicago and all the work that you do leading us around the country. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Sure. Next up, we have Kendra Brooks on the line. So I just want to bring her right in. Kendra Brooks, our Working Families at-large city councilwoman from Philly.
Thank you, Maurice. I'm sorry, I was having some internet connections there, but I really appreciate you. and the Working Families Party, people who helped me, make history here in Philadelphia. It's an amazing time. For the first time here in 7 decades, we broke the GOP. We beat the Democratic establishment, and we're bringing working class power into city council here in Philadelphia. And the most amazing thing is that they said that we couldn't do it. They said that we didn't have the right connections. We didn't have the money. They said that a Black single mom from North Philadelphia wasn't the right person. But we won. And we won because of the movement, because, hundreds and thousands of Philadelphians believed in this work, because we refused to back down, because we stood up. And I'm so thankful for everyone that voted, chipped in, knocked doors, and called friends. And most of all, I want to thank my friend and bestie these days, Nicholas O'Rourke. I'm so proud of our campaign. I'm so proud of the tens and thousands of Philadelphians that we brought into this electoral process. And we all know that the real victory isn't just one seat. It's the building the power that we've seen through this campaign. It's about leading real change in here in Philadelphia. And I know that Nicholas will continue to lead us here in Philadelphia and nationally for years to come. And I'm really excited about that. We're here on this call to talk about building Black political power. And I want to say to every Black woman out there thinking about running for office that you can do it. But running for office wasn't easy at all. It was a major sacrifice on my family, my extended family, and myself, but it was worth it. I'm proud of what I accomplished, not only for my daughters and granddaughters, but other people's daughters and granddaughters that will see me break a narrative of who I am and what people perceived me to be, and to build a working families party candidate here in Philadelphia. And the most amazing thing is that the Working Families Party, empowered me to run 100% myself. And that's something that, we don't have the opportunity to do as Black women. And if you're thinking about running for office, just remember that, Working Families Party will have your back, and just do it. Just buckle down and just do it. And I thank you everyone for just the continued support and all the support to get me and other Black women like me across this country in leadership. And it's an amazing thing. And we've done it together.
Well, thank you so much, Kendra. And I could tell you that, I'm more than a year into my tenure as the National Director of the Working Families Party, but your candidacy and the movement that your candidacy built around every community in Philadelphia is why I came to the Working Families Party. So I want to thank you for your tremendous sacrifice and all the opportunities that we're going to have following your election in order to build real people-centered power. Thank you.
Thank you, Maurice.
Sure. So next, I want to bring a member on. Every month, we also take the opportunity to highlight a new WFP member from somewhere in the country, and I'm excited to introduce Leslie Mack. Leslie is the digital organizer for BlackWomxnFor, where she is helping to create intentional spaces for Black women to discuss how they can organize and flex their political power in the 2020 presidential election. Leslie was on stage in Atlanta earlier this week as BlackWomxnFor endorsed Senator Warren for president. She's also a member of the WFP. So Leslie, can you introduce yourself and tell us why you decided to join WFP?
I sure can. First, thanks for having me, and it's so good to see you, Mo. I'm Leslie Mack, and I'm coming to you from Charlotte, North Carolina, where I live, and returned home just a couple days ago from the exciting Atlanta event. And as far as like my story to becoming a WFP member, it actually goes back to my feelings after the 2016 election, which I know a lot of us had a lot of feelings going on, just kind of a stirring. And while I simultaneously acknowledged that like I did the things that I felt I should have, like I voted, I told other people to vote, I was clear and communicating those things, I also kind of had to take a really like hard look in the mirror after that election and really think about how I was going to show up moving forward politically, both as a Black woman and as an organizer. And so for me, one of the big things that I decided to do was become a member of WFP. I really needed to have a progressive political home that could hold the multitudes of me, my Blackness, my womanhood, my first-gen immigrant status, with my family being from Jamaica. So for me, it was really about a comprehensive approach to how I was going to interact with this electoral process, with political power, and WFP has been a really great way for me to be able to do that, to stay informed, to stay engaged, and to be connected with like-minded people in the world, generally speaking.
Well, thanks so much, Leslie. And it's so great to see you. And I'm really excited and really proud of all the work and organizing that you've been doing this year. It's great to see the work begin to build momentum. Very proud of you. Now, it's wonderful in general to hear the great work that WFP members are doing all over the country, especially when it comes to uplifting Black women in our political system. And it makes it so clear the moral mandate all of us have to ensure a nation that is just and kind and gives all the ability to thrive, no matter where you're from, what you believe, what you look like, who you love, or how much money your parents may have. I'm so glad people like Leslie and so many of you on this call are taking that mandate seriously. The only way we can build the nation together, and the nation that I just talked about, is through organizing a multiracial coalition. And at the WFP, we depend on each other. We depend on our smarts and intellect, our creativity, our time, our money and resources. And that's why I'm going to remind you to sign up as a WFP member. If you believe in this movement, if you believe in everything, all the change and all the grassroots power that we talked about on this call, from the work that's happening in Chicago to the groundbreaking work that Kendra talked about in Philly, to the work that Leslie is doing around the country, we need you to be active and to be a part of it. If you've never officially joined as a dues-paying member, it's very, very easy. You could do it right now. You could just text the word member to 738-674 on your phone. So you could take your phone right now and go in the text device, the text box, text the number 738-674 as the number you're sending the text to, and text the word member. And that'll take you directly to a page where you can sign up right now. Or if you're on the computer right now, you could look at the link that should be posted in the chat box, and you could click on that link right now. And as soon as you become a member, a WFP membership card will be sent to you in about a week. Now, if you're joining right now, please say so in the chat window if you're able to do that. And if you're already a member but want to bump up, please do that as well. This is how we build a movement that is independent from the interest of organized capital, as well as the two-party structure, by building a movement that is fueled and run and funded by the multiracial grassroots alignment that we so desperately need to build. So let me just give everybody a minute to sign up. And I'm serious about this. If you're on this call and you're not already paying as a monthly member and you're paying dues, it's time to step up. And I want to shout you out if you're doing that. So please take the initiative now, and also mention in the chat box if you've done so. Okay, great. And thank you everybody who joined as a member. Thank you everybody who bumped up. We appreciate you so much.